Dear listener, welcome once more to the Hercule Poirot story podcast, where the little grey cells of the great Belgian detective unravel the most perplexing enigmas of human depravity. Tonight, we transport you to the desolate, fog-shrouded moors of Dartmoor in Devon, England, during the shadowy interlude of the 1930s, a time when the vestiges of empire clung tenuously to the souls of men, and secrets festered like untreated wounds in the damp, unyielding earth. In this tale of blood, poison, and the killer in the fog, we delve into the demise of Lord Archibald Blackwood, a retired colonel of formidable repute, whose life was extinguished by an insidious dose of arsenic administered in his evening brandy, yet discovered with a gruesome stab wound, blood pooling amidst the fog, as if the very mists had conspired in the act. Dear listener, settle into your armchair, dim the lights, and allow the tendrils of mystery to ensnare your imagination. Should you discern a clue before Monsieur Poirot, do share your deductions with us via our podcast communiqué. But beware, the fog hides more than it reveals. And now, let the story commence. Chapter 1. The Gathering Storm. The fog descended upon Dartmoor like a shroud woven from the very essence of melancholy, enveloping the ancient landscape in a pallid embrace that muffled the cries of distant curlews and rendered the world a spectral dream. It was October 1935, a month when the winds of autumn carried whispers of impending winter, and the moors of Devon stretched endlessly under a leaden sky, their undulating hills cloaked in heather that bloomed defiantly amidst the chill. Blackwood Manor, that venerable pile of granite and history, perched atop a solitary tor, its turrets piercing the mist like the fingers of a long-forgotten giant. Built in the reign of Queen Victoria, the estate bore the weight of generations, its walls etched with the patina of time and the secrets of those who had dwelt within. Ivy clung tenaciously to its facade, as if seeking to conceal the cracks that betrayed its age, while the surrounding bogs exhaled a damp, earthy aroma that mingled with the faint tang of peat fires from nearby crofts. Into this tableau of desolation arrived Hercule Poirot, the celebrated Belgian detective whose reputation for unravelling the most labyrinthine mysteries preceded him like a herald's fanfare. Poirot alighted from the motor car with the precision of a man who abhorred disorder, his patent leather shoes sinking slightly into the gravel drive, eliciting a faint grimace that twitched his meticulously waxed moustaches. He was a diminutive figure, impeccably attired in a tailored overcoat of fine wool, a Homburg hat perched at a jaunty angle upon his egg-shaped head, and gloves that shielded his manicured hands from the vulgarities of the elements. Yet beneath this veneer of fastidious elegance lay a mind of unparalleled acuity, a repository of little grey cells that whirred ceaselessly, dissecting human folly with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Poirot's psychology was one of profound orderliness, a bulwark against the chaos of crime. He viewed the world through a lens of logic, where every anomaly was a thread to be pulled until the tapestry of truth unravelled. Awaiting him at the manor's oaken door was Inspector James Japp of Scotland Yard, a stout Englishman of middle years whose ruddy complexion spoke of hearty meals and the occasional indulgence in fine ales. Japp's frame was solid, clad in a tweed suit that strained slightly at the seams, his tie askew in the manner of a man more concerned with pursuit than presentation. His eyes, sharp and discerning beneath bushy brows, betrayed a psychology forged in the crucible of metropolitan crime, dogged persistence alloyed with a pragmatic cynicism, tempered by occasional flashes of exasperation when confronted with the esoteric methods of his Belgian colleague. "Poirot, old chap," Japp boomed, extending a calloused hand. "You're a godsend in this infernal murk. Lord Blackwood's been done in, right enough. Poisoned with arsenic in his brandy, the quack says. But there's a devil of a stab wound too, blood all over the shop. Nasty bit of work, and this Fog's playing merry hell with the evidence." Poirot inclined his head, his dark eyes gleaming with that peculiar intensity that heralded the engagement of his formidable intellect. "Ah, mon ami Japp, the fog. It is indeed a most insidious accomplice to villainy. It conceals the footsteps of the guilty, muffles the screams of the victim, and veils the motives that lurk in the hearts of men. But fear not. Hercule Poirot shall pierce this veil with the light of reason." As they traversed the threshold into the manor's cavernous hall, where gas lamps flickered fitfully against the encroaching dusk, Poirot absorbed the atmosphere. A symphony of creaking timbers, the distant drip of rainwater from eaves, and the pervasive chill that seeped through stone walls, like regret, through an unquiet conscience. The victim, Lord Archibald Blackwood, lay in eternal repose within the study, a room redolent of leather-bound volumes and the acrid residue of cigar smoke. He had been a colonel in His Majesty's Indian Army, retired after campaigns that had etched lines of authority upon his craggy visage, tall and broad-shouldered even in death, with a grizzled beard that framed a mouth perpetually set in stern disapproval, and eyes, now glassy, that had once pierced subordinates with the force of command. His psychology was that of an autocrat, unyielding and imperious, a man who wielded power as a birthright, fostering resentment in those who orbited his sphere. Discovered slumped over his mahogany desk, a crimson stain blossoming from a jagged wound in his side, the scene suggested violence born of passion. Yet the autopsy, conducted hastily by the local physician, revealed arsenic as the true architect of his demise, administered insidiously through his evening libation. The brandy decanter, crystalline and half-emptied, stood sentinel nearby, its contents a silent testament to treachery. The household had assembled in the drawing-room, a chamber of faded grandeur where heavy brocade curtains framed windows obscured by fog, and a fire crackled in the grate, casting dancing shadows that seemed to mock the solemnity of the occasion. Poirot surveyed the suspects with the acuity of an artist studying his canvas, each figure a study in concealed turmoil and potential culpability. Foremost was Lady Evelyn Blackwood, the widow, a woman of 45, whose slender form was encased in a gown of mourning silk, her raven hair coiled in an elegant chignon that accentuated the pallor of her porcelain skin. Her emerald eyes, sharp as cut glass, held a depth of emotion carefully banked, like embers awaiting a gust to ignite. Psychologically, she was a fortress of restraint, her soul scarred by years of matrimonial discord. Lord Blackwood's notorious infidelities had eroded the foundations of their union, breeding a motive of revenge that simmered beneath her composed exterior. Beside her lounged young Reginald Blackwood, the heir apparent, a lanky youth of 25 whose dishevelled tweed suit and tousled auburn locks bespoke a life of reckless indulgence. His restless gaze darted about the room, fingers drumming an erratic tattoo upon his knee, revealing a psyche fractured by impulsivity and desperation. Gambling debts had ensnared him like thorns in a briar patch, and the promise of inheritance loomed as his sole salvation, a motive as potent as it was transparent. Mr. Victor Thorne, the business associate, occupied an armchair with the solidity of a man accustomed to boardrooms and balance sheets. Stout and balding, his pinstripe suit strained over a paunch, while his beady eyes, set in a florid face, gleamed with shrewd calculation. His psychology was one of unbridled opportunism, a ruthless ambition that viewed alliances as mere stepping stones. A bitter dispute over embezzled funds from their colonial enterprises provided a motive steeped in avarice and betrayal. Miss Eliza Hargrove, the housemaid, hovered at the periphery, her petite frame clad in a starched uniform, freckled cheeks flushed with anxiety, and hazel eyes downcast as if fearing the revelations they might betray. Trembling like a fawn in the underbrush, her psyche was a mosaic of loyalty cracked by bitterness. A clandestine affair with the Lord had borne fruit, a child disowned, fostering a vengeful secret that festered in silence. Lastly, old Josiah Wilkins, the gardener, stood sentinel by the door, his broad-shouldered form weathered by decades of toil, gnarled hands clasped before him, and a grizzled beard framing eyes narrowed in habitual suspicion. Stoic and unyielding as the Moors themselves, his psychology was forged in resentment. An unfounded accusation of theft by Lord Blackwood years prior had sullied his reputation, nurturing a motive of retribution that time had only sharpened. The air thickened with unspoken accusations as Lady Blackwood broke the silence, her voice a silken contralto laced with underlying venom. "This is utterly preposterous. Archibald was in robust health this very morning, discoursing on his infernal investments. Who could have perpetrated such an atrocity amidst this accursed fog?" Reginald shifted uneasily, his voice cracking with youthful indignation. Father had amassed enemies aplenty, mother, rivals from the war, creditors from his dealings. But poison, and that ghastly stab wound? It's barbaric, I tell you. Thorne interjected with oily smoothness, dabbing at his brow with a monogrammed handkerchief. "Let us not indulge in hasty conjectures, my dear lady. Business adversaries, perchance. I myself was ensconced in the library throughout the evening, perusing our accounts with the utmost diligence." Eliza, twisting her apron in nervous paroxysms, murmured softly, I served the brandy as was customary, sir. There was naught amiss, I swear it upon my honour." Wilkins grunted from his post, his tone rough as gravel underfoot. "The fog, it conceals manifold sins, it does. I was out tending to the roses till the gloaming fell." Poirot paced the room with deliberate steps, his hands clasped behind his back, absorbing the interplay of words and glances. "Messieurs et mesdames," he intoned, his accented English precise and melodic. "The method of this crime is most curious indeed. Arsenic, that subtle assassin, creeps upon its victim with the stealth of a shadow, yet the presence of blood from a wound, administered post-mortem perhaps, it suggests a theatrical flourish designed to mislead. And the fog, it provides the perfect cloak for the perpetrator's approach. But rest assured, Hercule Poirot sees through such mists with the clarity of truth. Even in these nascent moments, a red herring emerged to tantalize the unwary. A muddy footprint upon the study's threshold, imprint matching the tread of Reginald's boots, though the young man protested vehemently that he had been in the village settling debts, a claim whose timeline would soon invite scrutiny. The fire popped and hissed, as if echoing the simmering tensions, while outside the fog pressed ever closer, a silent witness to the unfolding drama. Chapter 2. Shadows of Suspicion. As the mantel clock in the hall chimed the hour of 9, its resonant tolls echoing through the corridors of Blackwood Manor like the inexorable march of fate, the fog outside thickened into an impenetrable curtain, pressing against the mullioned windows with the insistence of a spectral intruder. The night had deepened into a realm of profound obscurity where the moors beyond seemed to dissolve into nothingness, and the only sounds were the intermittent patter of rain upon slate roofs and the occasional groan of ancient timbers settling under the weight of centuries. Within the library, a sanctuary of polished oak shelves burdened with leather-bound tomes of arcane knowledge and forgotten histories, Hercule Poirot commenced his methodical interrogations. The room was illuminated by the soft glow of gas lamps, their flames dancing fitfully and casting elongated shadows that writhed across the walls like the manifestations of guilty consciences. The air was redolent with the musty perfume of aged paper and the faint, acrid tang of spent tobacco from Lord Blackwood's final cigar, a poignant reminder of mortality amidst the trappings of erudition. Poirot, seated at a grand escritoire with the poise of a conductor before his orchestra, arranged his accoutrements with characteristic precision. A notebook of pristine vellum, a silver fountain pen, and a magnifying glass that gleamed under the lamplight. His little grey cells, those indefatigable engines of deduction, hummed with anticipation, dissecting not merely the words of the suspects but the subtle inflections of their voices, the fleeting expressions that betrayed the labyrinthine depths of their psyches. Inspector Japp lingered nearby, his sturdy form propped against a bookcase, arms folded in an attitude of watchful skepticism, his mind a bastion of empirical evidence tempered by the occasional deference to Poirot's esoteric insights. The first to be summoned was Lady Evelyn Blackwood, who entered with the regal grace of a dowager empress, her morning gown whispering against the parquet floor. She seated herself upon a velvet chaise longue, her slender hands folded in her lap with studied composure, though Poirot noted the faint tremor that betrayed an undercurrent of turmoil. Her emerald eyes, usually so piercing, now held a veiled opacity, as if a scrim of sorrow, or perhaps calculation, had descended upon them. Psychologically, she was a paragon of suppressed emotion, her soul a vault, wherein grievances were interred, but never extinguished. The humiliations inflicted by her husband's philandering had forged a resilience laced with latent fury, a motive that Poirot probed with the delicacy of a surgeon's probe. "Madame," Poirot began, his voice a mellifluous cadence infused with continental courtesy, "you will oblige me by recounting the events of this fateful evening. Where were you when the tragedy befell your esteemed husband?" Lady Blackwood inclined her head slightly, her chignon undisturbed by the gesture. "Monsieur Poirot, I was sequestered in my private chambers, engrossed in a volume of poetry, Keats, to be precise. The fog had rendered the outdoors inhospitable, and I sought solace in verse. It was not until the housemaid's scream rent the air that I descended to the study." Her tone was measured, each word enunciated with the precision of one accustomed to command. Yet Poirot discerned a psychological clue in the subtle quiver of her lip, a harbinger of rage long banked, now threatening to ignite. "And your relations with Lord Blackwood?" Poirot inquired gently, his moustaches twitching as he observed her reaction. One hears whispers of discord. A flicker of disdain crossed her features, swiftly masked. "Archibald was a man of appetites, monsieur. His indiscretions were a cross I bore with fortitude. But murder? I am no Medea to poison the well of matrimony." Her alibi appeared unassailable, corroborated by Miss Hargrove's earlier testimony of delivering a tray of tea to her ladyship's door at 8:30. Yet Poirot filed away the tremor in her hand, a telltale sign of inner tempest. Next entered young Reginald Blackwood, his lanky frame slouching into the chair with the petulance of youth thwarted. His auburn locks were dishevelled, as if raked by anxious fingers, and his eyes darted restlessly, reflecting a psyche ensnared by impulsivity and desperation, a gambler's soul forever chasing the elusive phantom of fortune. "Look here, Poirot," he blurted, his voice edged with defiance. "I know what you're thinking. Father's will favours me, and my debts are no secret. But I was at the village inn, the Hound's Head, settling accounts with that infernal bookie. Ask the barkeep, he'll vouch for me." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze penetrating. "Ah, but the timeline, Monsieur Reginald. It is of the essence. The pub, it closes at 8, non? Yet the body was discovered at 10. Where were you in the interim?" Reginald faltered, his cheeks flushing, and Poirot noted the torn betting slip protruding from his pocket. A red herring, perhaps, or a damning artifact linking him to the scene. For a similar scrap had been found near the body's foot. I lingered in the fog, walking back slowly, thinking, you know. His impulsivity shone through, a psychological flaw that rendered him susceptible to rash acts, yet his alibi held a thread of plausibility that Poirot would unravel later. Mr. Victor Thorne followed, his stout form settling into the seat with a wheeze, his pinstriped suit straining at the buttons. Balding part glistening under the lamp, his beady eyes shifted shrewdly, betraying a psychology of ruthless opportunism, a merchant's mind, where loyalty was a commodity traded for profit. "Poirot, this is a ghastly affair," he intoned, his voice oily as a well-polished ledger. "Blackwood and I quarrelled over funds. He accused me of siphoning from our African holdings. Poppycock. I was here in the library all evening, buried in accounts. No one can say otherwise." "Alone, Monsieur Thorne?" Poirot queried, magnifying glass in hand, as he examined a fragment of fabric snagged from the study's doorframe, a pinstriped thread matching Thorne's cuff. "This material, it is most intriguing. A physical clue, perhaps, or mere coincidence." Thorne blanched, mopping his brow, his ambition laid bare as a motive rooted in financial desperation, the embezzlement a secret that could ruin him. Miss Eliza Hargrove entered timidly, her mousy frame quivering like a leaf in the moorland gale, freckled cheeks pale and hazel eyes averted. She perched on the edge of the chair, twisting her apron in paroxysms of anxiety, her psyche a fragile edifice of loyalty fractured by betrayal, a woman's heart wounded by promises unkept. "Sir," she whispered, "I served the brandy at 7, as always. His lordship was in fine fettle then. I retired to the servants' quarters afterward." Poirot's tone softened. "And your connection to Lord Blackwood, mademoiselle? One senses a deeper sorrow." Tears welled in her eyes. He was kind once, promised to acknowledge our child, but cast us aside. Yet I could never harm him." Her behaviour suggested guilt, but Poirot perceived it as fear of scandal. Her poisoned knowledge from her apothecary father a potential red herring. Lastly, Josiah Wilkins shuffled in, his gnarled form exuding the stoicism of the earth itself. Mud-caked boots leaving faint prints upon the rug. His grizzled beard framed eyes narrowed in suspicion. His psychology a forge of resentment hammered by injustice. "What you want with me?" he grunted. "I was out in the fog, tending the greenhouse till dusk. Lord accused me of thieving tools back in 25, ruined me good name. Revenge, Monsieur Wilkins. It is a potent elixir," Poirot observed, noting the footprints leading from the study to the gardens, blurred by mist but suggestive. Wilkins' grudge was palpable, yet his alibi held for the time being. As the interrogations concluded, the suspects reconvened in the hall under Japp's watchful eye. Poirot, the inspector murmured. The arsenic was in the decanter, prints from all, smudged. Could be any of them. Ah, but the stab wound. It is mere theatre, Poirot replied. Blood for spectacle, to divert from poison. And the timeline. Lord retired at 8, found at 10. Where precisely were you all? Murmurs of denial arose, but inconsistencies flickered. Thorne's library claim clashed with a distant clock chime, hinting at tampering. The fire in the grate crackled ominously, shadows lengthening as the fog outside whispered of secrets yet unveiled. Chapter 3. Veils of Deception. Dawn crept over the Dartmoor horizon with the reluctance of a reluctant confessor, its pallid rays filtering through the omnipresent fog to cast a ghostly luminescence upon Blackwood Manor. The moors, vast and undulating under their blanket of mist, exhaled a chill that seeped into the very bones of the estate, where dew clung to the heather like unshed tears upon a mourner's cheek. The ancient granite walls, veined with ivy that whispered secrets to the wind, stood as silent sentinels to the unfolding drama within, while the bogs below gurgled softly, as if murmuring approbation to the night's dark deeds. The air was pregnant with the scent of damp earth and decaying foliage, an olfactory symphony that underscored the pervasive sense of decay, not merely of the season, but of human bonds frayed by betrayal and avarice. Hercule Poirot, ever the paragon of meticulous inquiry, arose with the first blush of light, his little grey cells already astir like bees in a hive of deduction. Attired in a crisp morning suit, his moustaches impeccably groomed despite the rustic environs, he ventured forth to scour the grounds, his patent leather shoes navigating the sodden paths with fastidious care. Poirot's psychology remained a bastion of order amidst chaos. He abhorred the haphazard, viewing each clue as a puzzle piece in the grand mosaic of truth, his mind dissecting motives with the precision of a horologist repairing a delicate timepiece. Accompanied by the indefatigable Inspector Japp, whose ruddy face bore the imprint of a sleepless night. His psyche, a sturdy edifice of empirical resolve, occasionally cracked by the weight of unresolved enigmas. They traversed the gardens, where the fog lingered in diaphanous veils, concealing and revealing in equal measure. Physical evidence began to accumulate like autumn leaves underfoot, each fragment a tantalizing whisper from the scene of the crime. In the greenhouse, a ramshackle structure of glass and iron, where exotic blooms wilted under the indifferent sky, Poirot unearthed a shard of vile glass, its surface etched faintly with the letter A, an abbreviation for arsenic concealed amidst pots of wilting orchids. This pointed inexorably to Josiah Wilkins, the gardener whose domain it was, his gnarled hands intimately acquainted with every nook of the verdant sanctuary. Yet, upon closer scrutiny with his magnifying glass, Poirot discerned that the footprints leading to the shard, blurred by the insidious mist, traced a circuitous path back to the manor's rear entrance, suggesting not natural egress, but deliberate fabrication, a red herring sown to mislead the unwary investigator. Psychological clues proliferated amidst this labyrinth of deception, each suspect's facade cracking under the relentless pressure of scrutiny. During a morning stroll along the fog-shrouded paths, Lady Evelyn Blackwood's composed demeanour faltered, like a dam breached by rising waters. Her emerald eyes, usually a fortress of inscrutability, flashed with unguarded venom as she reminisced upon her husband's betrayals. He deserved every ounce of misery fate could muster, she muttered unwittingly, her voice a sibilant hiss carried away by the breeze, before retracting with a forced laugh, a mere figure of speech Monsieur Poirot. The trials of matrimony, you understand." This slip revealed the vengeful core of her psyche, a woman whose restraint had been eroded by years of humiliation, her motive for revenge amplified by the prospect of widowhood's freedoms. Young Reginald Blackwood's desperation escalated to a fever pitch in a heated confrontation within the stable yard, where the scent of hay and equine musk mingled with the damp air. Pacing like a thoroughbred chafing at the bit, his tousled auburn locks dishevelled and his eyes wild with accusation, he railed against the suspicions cast upon him. "You presume I dispatched father for his wretched fortune?" he exclaimed, his voice cracking with impulsive fury. "I'd sooner rot in debtor's prison than sully my hands with his bloodied legacy." Yet, as Poirot probed gently, Reginald's alibi began to unravel like a poorly knotted skein. The barkeep at the Hound's Head, summoned via telegram for verification, recalled the young heir departing the inn not at 9, as claimed, but an hour earlier. A timeline inconsistency that cast a shadow of doubt upon his whereabouts, his gambling debts looming as a motive as inexorable as the tide. Mr. Victor Thorne, cornered in the billiard room where cues lay abandoned like forgotten weapons, blustered with the indignation of a man whose secrets teetered on exposure. His florid cheeks flushed deeper as Poirot confronted him with evidence of embezzlement from their colonial enterprises. Ledgers pilfered from the study revealing discrepancies in the African trade accounts. Blackwood was the true pilferer, Thorne protested, brandishing papers with trembling hands, his beady eyes darting like those of a trapped fox. "These documents exonerate me. He siphoned funds for his own vices." Yet his ruthless ambition gleamed through the veneer, hinting at a motive for elimination. With Blackwood silenced, Thorne could seize control of the ventures, his opportunism a blade honed by years of cutthroat commerce. Miss Eliza Hargrove's behaviour grew increasingly erratic, her mousy demeanour fracturing under the strain. Observed fleeing to the moors in the pallid dawn light, her petite frame swallowed by the mist, she retrieved a hidden letter from beneath a gnarled hawthorn. A missive from Lord Blackwood denying paternity of her child, his words a cruel repudiation scrawled in imperious script. This is why I endured," she confessed tearfully upon her return, hazel eyes brimming with anguish as she clutched the paper to her breast. Her psyche, a fragile vessel of loyalty shattered by betrayal, amplified her motive. The secret affair, once a flicker of hope, now festered into vengeful despair, her knowledge of poisons from her apothecary lineage a potential instrument of retribution. Old Josiah Wilkins, encountered in the tool shed amid the clangour of sharpening shears, revealed a deeper grudge than previously intimated, his stoic facade cracking like parched earth under rain. "'T weren't just the theft accusation," he growled, his grizzled beard quivering with suppressed rage. "Lord sacked me brother from the estate, claimed incompetence, but 'twas to cover his own mismanagement. Family ruined, scattered to the winds." Yet, as Poirot examined the gardener's boots, the footprints from the greenhouse mismatched in tread and size, suggesting not culpability, but victimization. A clue that the evidence had been planted to ensnare him, his resentment real, but perhaps unacted upon. Gathering the suspects once more in the drawing room, where the fire sputtered fitfully against the encroaching chill, Poirot addressed them with the authority of one who wielded truth as a sceptre. "Messieurs et mesdames," he declared, his accented voice resonating with dramatic flair. "The killer strikes under cover of fog, employing poison for its insidious certainty. yet adding the stab wound for theatrical drama. But why this duality? To obscure the true method? None. To sow confusion amidst the mists, where alibis dissolve like vapour. Murmurs rippled through the assembly, eyes shifting with unease. A further red herring emerged to tantalise. Upon Lady Blackwood's locket, a delicate filigree piece she fingered nervously, Poirot detected a faint residue of white powder. Arsenic, perhaps. Yet chemical analysis, hastily conducted with Japp's kit, revealed it to be innocuous jewellery cleaner, a misdirection that briefly clouded the investigative waters. As thunder rumbled distantly over the moors, presaging a storm that mirrored the gathering tempest within, the veils of deception thickened, each clue a thread in the web of intrigue, drawing Poirot ever closer to the arachnid at its centre. The fog outside swirled with renewed vigour, a silent accomplice to the secrets yet entombed. Chapter 4. The fog thickens. As midday approached, the fog over Dartmoor refused to yield its dominion, cloaking the moors in an eternal twilight that blurred the boundaries between earth and ether, rendering the landscape a canvas of muted greys and whispering uncertainties. Blackwood Manor, that bastion of faded aristocracy, seemed to hunker down beneath the oppressive pall, its granite facade glistening with condensation like beads of perspiration upon a fevered brow. The air hung heavy with the cloying scent of sodden peat and the faint, acrid tang of wood smoke from the village chimneys below, where life persisted in oblivious rhythm amidst the encircling mists. Winds moaned through the crevices of the estate, carrying echoes of distant sheep bleats and the occasional mournful cry of a lapwing, as if the very moors lamented the iniquity harboured within the manor's walls. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the atmospheric oppression, pursued his inquiries with the relentless precision of a metronome, his little grey cells orchestrating a symphony of deduction amidst the cacophony of deception. Clad in his immaculate attire, now augmented by a woolen muffler against the insidious chill, he navigated the corridors with purposeful strides, his moustaches quivering like antennae, attuned to the subtlest vibrations of falsehood. Poirot's psychology remained an exemplar of methodical serenity. He viewed the human soul as a mechanism, its gears and springs exposed through careful observation, each aberration a clue to the malfunction of motive and malice. Yet even his composure was tested when, during a momentary respite in the morning room, a secondary incident unfolded with chilling audacity. A teacup, ostensibly prepared for his refreshment, emitted a faint, anomalous odour that his keen senses detected as arsenic's insidious signature. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot exclaimed, setting the cup aside with alacrity as Inspector Japp burst into the room, his ruddy features etched with alarm. The tea, upon hasty analysis, confirmed the presence of the poison, thwarted only by Poirot's vigilance. This brazen attempt heightened the manor's stifling atmosphere, transforming suspicion into palpable dread, as psyches frayed like worn tapestries under the strain of impending revelation. "The killer grows bold, mon ami," Poirot murmured to Japp, his eyes narrowing. "They seek to silence the one who unravels their web. But Hercule Poirot is not so easily dispatched." The interrogations deepened, each exchange peeling away layers of artifice like the mist parting briefly under a gust. Mr. Victor Thorne's alibi, previously proffered with oily assurance, cracked under the weight of scrutiny like brittle ice upon a frozen pond. Confronted in the conservatory, where wilting ferns drooped in sympathy with the day's gloom, Thorne mopped his balding pate with a handkerchief, his beady eyes shifting evasively. "You insinuate I wandered from the library," he blustered, his stout frame quivering with indignation. Absurd. I was immersed in ledgers until the scream. Yet a footman's testimony, elicited by Japp's dogged persistence, placed Thorn near the study at precisely 9 o'clock, ostensibly retrieving a misplaced document. Merely fetching a ledger, nothing more, Thorn protested, his ruthless opportunism laid bare, the embezzlement motive gleaming like a sharpened blade in the dim light. Miss Eliza Hargrove's erratic behaviour escalated into a tableau of desperation. Her petite form glimpsed fleeing into the moors as the fog swirled about her like a conspiratorial cloak. Poirot, alerted by a servant's cry, pursued with Japp in tow, their footsteps muffled upon the spongy turf. They discovered her huddled beneath the ancient tor, clutching a weathered envelope retrieved from a crevice in the rock. A letter from Lord Blackwood, its contents a venomous repudiation of her claims to motherhood, scrawled in his imperious hand. He swore oaths of acknowledgement, Eliza sobbed, hazel eyes brimming with anguish, her freckled cheeks streaked with tears, then discarded us like refuse. But poison him? I lacked the heart, or the means. Her psyche, a fragile mosaic shattered by betrayal, amplified her motive. Yet Poirot discerned in her tremors not the cold calculation of a murderess, but the raw terror of exposure. Her absence from the servants' quarters during the crucial hour, a timeline inconsistency that begged further probing. Old Josiah Wilkins, encountered in the potting shed amidst the earthy aroma of compost and sharpened tools, divulged a grudge deeper than the moorland bogs themselves. His broad-shouldered form leaned upon a spade, gnarled hands gripping the handle with the tenacity of rooted oak, his grizzled beard framing eyes alight with long nurtured ire. "'T wasn't merely the theft slur," he growled, his voice rough as the granite underfoot. "Lord Blackwood drove me kin to ruin, sacked me brother for a trifling error, left him beggared and broken, family scattered, dreams dashed upon the rocks." Yet, as Poirot examined the gardener's array of implements, the bloody knife discovered in his shed, previously a damning artifact, proved pristine upon closer inspection, its stains not human crimson, but the residue of slaughtered fowl from the larder, a misdirection planted to ensnare the innocent. Young Reginald Blackwood's impulsivity ignited in a vehement altercation with Thorn in the billiard room, where cues clattered like accusations upon the bays. "You pilfered from father's coffers, admit it," Reginald snarled, his lanky frame taut with fury, auburn locks falling into eyes blazing with desperation. "Your greed poisoned him as surely as the arsenic," Thorn retorted with venom. "Your debts would have beggared the estate. Perhaps you hastened the inheritance." The exchange, overheard by Poirot from the adjoining hall, illuminated the fractures in their psyches. Reginald's gambling-fueled recklessness clashing with Thorn's avaricious cunning, each motive a spark in the tinderbox of suspicion. Lady Evelyn Blackwood, observing from the shadows of the doorway, interjected with calculating poise, her emerald eyes surveying the fray like a general assessing a battlefield. "All of you, mere parasites feasting upon Archibald's legacy," she intoned, her voice a silken lash. "Your squabbles profane his memory." Her psychology, a fortress of restraint veined with suppressed rage, hinted at deeper involvement. Yet her alibi remained unbreached, her movements accounted for by the household staff. Clues converged like tributaries into a swelling river of evidence. A fragment of pinstriped fabric from Thorn's suit cuff, snagged upon the poison vial's shard in the greenhouse, suggested his hand in planting the incriminating glass. Eliza's timeline revealed an unexplained absence at the hour of the poisoning, her path crossing the study's vicinity en route to the moors. Wilkins' knife, exonerated of blood guilt, shifted suspicion elsewhere, while Reginald's handkerchief, discovered blooded in his chamber, proved a red herring upon examination. Not the stain of murder, but the residue of a chronic nosebleed, aggravated by the damp climate and his fraught nerves. Poirot, retreating to the library for contemplation, paced before the flickering hearth, his hands clasped behind his back in characteristic pose. "The fog thickens, mes amis," he mused aloud to Jap, who nursed a pipe in companionable silence. "It conceals not merely the perpetrator's steps, but the intricate dance of motives. Money, revenge, secrets entwined like the ivy upon these walls. The poison for subtlety, the stab for spectacle, the attempts upon my person to halt the inexorable march of truth. Yet the mind, it reveals what the mists obscure. Ambition unchecked, bitterness unquenched, timelines twisted like the paths across these moors." As the afternoon waned, the fog pressed closer, a silent sentinel to the escalating tensions, each suspect ensnared in the web of their own deceptions. Thunder grumbled ominously in the distance, presaging a deluge that mirrored the impending cascade of revelations, while within Blackwood Manor, the atmosphere grew electric with the promise of unmasking. Chapter 5. The revelation in the mist evening descended upon Dartmoor, with the inexorability of a curtain falling upon a tragic stage, the fog a diaphanous shroud that enveloped Blackwood Manor in its clammy embrace, muffling the world beyond to a spectral hush. The moors, vast and inscrutable under the gathering dusk, exhaled mists that rose like phantoms from the peat bogs, swirling about the estate's turrets and whispering through the crevices of its ancient walls. The air was thick with the scent of impending rain, mingled with the faint, acrid tang of chimney smoke from the manor's hearths, where fires crackled fitfully against the encroaching chill. Thunder rumbled distantly, a portentous growl that echoed the tensions simmering within, as if the heavens themselves conspired to underscore the drama unfolding in the drawing room. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian maestro of deduction, had orchestrated this climactic assembly with the precision of a symphonist composing his finale. The suspects were convened amidst the room's faded opulence, heavy damask curtains framing windows obscured by vapour, gas lamps casting a golden glow that danced upon polished mahogany and glinted off crystal decanters. Poirot stood at the centre, his egg-shaped head held high, moustaches quivering with anticipatory vigour, his little grey cells triumphant in their conquest of chaos. His psychology was one of unassailable order, a mind that transformed the discordant notes of human frailty into a harmonious revelation of truth. Inspector Japp flanked him, his sturdy frame a pillar of empirical authority, his ruddy countenance etched with the satisfaction of a case nearing closure, though his psyche retained a trace of awe for Poirot's esoteric methods. The suspects arrayed themselves in a semicircle of unease. Lady Evelyn Blackwood upon a chaise, her slender form rigid with suppressed emotion, emerald eyes flickering like embers in the firelight. Young Reginald Blackwood pacing restlessly, his lanky figure taut with anxiety, auburn locks dishevelled. Mr. Victor Thorne ensconced in an armchair, his stout paunch heaving with laboured breaths, beady eyes darting shrewdly. Miss Eliza Hargrove hovering at the periphery, her petite frame trembling, hazel eyes wide with trepidation. And old Josiah Wilkins by the door, his weathered form stoic, gnarled hands clasped, grizzled beard framing a face etched with suspicion. The atmosphere was electric, psyches frayed to the breaking point. Each individual a vessel of concealed motives now poised for exposure. Messieurs et Mesdames, Poirot commenced, his voice a resonant timbre infused with dramatic flair, pacing with measured steps that commanded the room's attention. We gather in this chamber, shrouded by the fog that has been both accomplice and witness to villainy, to unveil the perpetrator of Lord Archibald Blackwood's demise. The murder was a masterpiece of misdirection, a tapestry woven with threads of poison and blood, designed to confound the unwary. Arsenic, that insidious serpent, administered in the evening brandy to ensure a slow, inexorable death, yet augmented by a post-mortem stab wound, with blood artfully spilled to suggest a crime of passion, obscuring the calculated precision of toxicology. He paused, his dark eyes sweeping the assembly, noting the subtle shifts. Lady Blackwood's faint tremor, Reginald's clenched fists, Thorne's perspiring brow, Eliza's averted gaze, Wilkins' narrowed eyes. The fog, it provided the perfect veil, concealing footsteps, muffling movements, allowing the killer to strike and retreat into obscurity. But Hercule Poirot penetrates such myths with the light of logic. Let us reconstruct the tableau. Poirot turned first to the physical evidence, his hands gesturing with elegant precision. The muddy footprints near the body, imprinted with the tread of Monsieur Reginald's boots, yet fabricated, mes amis, by the true culprit to implicate the heir. The shard of vial in the greenhouse, etched with A for arsenic, planted to ensnare Monsieur Wilkins, whose domain it invaded, and the fabric fragment from a pinstriped cuff, snagged upon the study's door. That was no accident, but a careless oversight by one whose suit matches precisely. Thorne shifted uncomfortably, his florid cheeks paling, but Poirot continued undeterred. Timeline inconsistencies abound, like cracks in a flawed edifice. Lord Blackwood retired to his study at 8, imbibing the tainted brandy shortly thereafter. The body was discovered at 10, the arsenic having wrought its fatal work. Yet Monsieur Thorne claimed seclusion in the library at 8:30, corroborated by no witness. And the grandfather clock's chime, it was tampered with, set back by the killer to fabricate an alibi. Psychological clues, those subtle harbingers of the soul's secrets, were laid bare next. Ambition unchecked, revenge cloaked in opportunism, secrets festering like wounds untended. These are the motives that propel the human heart to depravity. Lady Blackwood, your rage at matrimonial betrayals is profound, a vengeful fire banked but never extinguished. Yet your alibi holds, your psyche one of endurance, not action. Monsieur Reginald, your debts ensnare you like thorns, impulsivity your flaw, the inheritance tempts, but your timeline, verified by the barkeep's amended recollection, exonerates you. Mademoiselle Eliza, your bitterness, from disowned progeny simmers, anxiety your veil, yet it masks fear, not guilt. Your absence was to retrieve that damning letter, not to administer poison. Poirot's gaze fixed upon Wilkins. Monsieur Wilkins, your resentment runs deep as the moor's roots. Accusations of theft, the ruin of kin, a motive potent as peat fire. The bloody knife in your shed, a red herring stained with fowl's blood from the larder, planted to divert suspicion. Your footprints mismatch the fabricated ones. You are innocent, a victim of misdirection. A collective gasp rippled through the room as Poirot pivoted, his finger extending like a verdict. Non. The architect of this enigma is Monsieur Victor Thorne. You, with your ruthless ambition, embezzled from the colonial ventures, millions siphoned, discovered by Lord Blackwood on that fateful eve. During a purported business discussion in the study, you laced the brandy with arsenic, procured from your chemical contacts in trade. As the poison took hold, you retreated into the fog, returning later under its cover to stage the stab wound, spilling animal blood for theatrical effect, planting evidence to implicate others. Thorn bolted upright, his paunch quivering, face ashen. Preposterous, you have no proof, you meddlesome foreigner. His voice cracked, opportunism crumbling into desperation. Ah, but the little grey cells assemble the mosaic, Poirot retorted, producing a handkerchief from his pocket, Thorn's own, monogrammed, retrieved from the scene. This, overlooked in your haste, bears traces of arsenic residue, confirmed by the physician's test. The ledgers, forged in your hand, the fabric from your cuff, the timeline shattered by the footman's sighting, and the attempt upon my teacup, your final folly, born of panic as the noose tightened. Thorn collapsed into his chair, the fight draining from his corpulent frame like air from a punctured balloon. "Curse you, Poirot," he muttered, burying his face in his hands. "Blackwood confronted me that night, threatened exposure, ruin, the arsenic. It was meant to be subtle, a natural decline, but he suspected, clutched at his throat. I panicked, staged the wound to suggest a grudge killing. The fog hid my comings and goings. I thought it foolproof." Japp stepped forward, handcuffs glinting in the lamplight. "Well done, Poirot. Another notch in your belt. Thorn, you're nicked for murder." Poirot inclined his head modestly, a faint smile curling his moustaches. "The little grey cells, they never fail, mon ami. In the mist of deception, truth emerges like the dawn. Order is restored to this fog-shrouded realm." As Thorn was led away, the remaining souls exhaled in collective relief. Lady Blackwood's composure cracking into quiet sobs, Reginald's shoulders sagging, Eliza's tremors easing, Wilkins nodding gruffly. Outside, the fog began to lift, tendrils parting as rain pattered gently upon the panes, cleansing the moors of their spectral veil. Blackwood Manor, freed from the shadow of murder, stood resilient against the night, its secrets unveiled, the killer unmasked in the revelation of the mist